The scissors flashed cold and sharp under those ugly fluorescent lights in the locker room, the kind that make everyone look pale and guilty. Mason Knight, all quarterback swagger and entitled smirk, had Grace Turner pinned against the lockers, her high cheerleader ponytail caught tight in his fist. His two football buddies blocked the exit, the infamous Willowbrook wall. Let me tell you, in the next 15 seconds, this so-called nobody, the new scholarship cheerleader, was about to kick her way out and take down the high and mighty Knight dynasty. What started as, "Hey, want to go to dinner?" ended with three boys moaning on the floor and the Principal Mason's own father about to watch his kingdom crumble. Yeah, you heard that right, because this Texas high school showdown, sometimes the quiet ones pack the deadliest kicks. So, picture this Willowbrook high, 7:15 a.m., still smelling like a mix of new paint and old money, and Grace is standing at her locker with hands shaking just enough to betray nerves. Not fear, just the buzz of being out of place, you know? Her cheer uniform is crisp, hair up in that ponytail, but it's all just armor. Her family? Not old Willowbrook. Her dad is grinding double shifts at the refinery so her little brother can get medicine. She learned her first cartwheel on a torn-up mat in a community center, not in one of those country club gyms these kids grow up in. What nobody here knew, Grace spent 8 years at her uncle's MMA dojo, racks of trophies gathering dust. She'd buried that life. Here, she just wanted to keep her head down and jump through the hoops literally so she could hold on to her scholarship. But Willowbrook, it eats people like her alive, especially when you run in a Mason Knight. 6'3", square-jawed, and captain of the football team, a king in a Letterman jacket. He walked these halls like he owned them because, honestly, with his dad as principal and the school board in his pocket, he kind of did. His crew, Brady Chun and Tyler Morrison, had run off 3 scholarship kids in the last 2 years. You didn't step out of line if you wanted to survive here. Of course, Mason noticed Grace right away. Not just because she was pretty, though. She had that natural, effortless kind of good looks that made all the other cheerleaders' expensive highlights seem a little desperate, but because she moved different, like someone who knew how to use her body for more than just routines. He cornered her after the first practice, turned on that smile like a weapon. "Hey, I'm Mason, let me show you around. Steaks on me," he said. Grace didn't even look up, just kept packing her bag. "I'm good, thanks." You could see his ego pop like a soap bubble, and his buddies cracking up behind him. Nobody turned down Mason Knight, especially not the charity case. But it wasn't pride that lit the fuse. It was that look she gave him, like he was just some kid, not the center of the universe. That's what really got him. The rest was inevitable. The harassment started small. New combo on her locker, missing uniforms, accidentally double-booked for equipment duty, so she'd miss study time. Her coach liked her coach, Rivera, all business, ex-UT cheerleader who ran practice like a drill sergeant, but it didn't matter. The team captain, Brittany Caldwell, took her cues from Mason, and if Brittany wanted you gone, you might as well pack up now. Grace kept her head down and kept receipts literally, jotting everything in a little notebook. Her uncle always said, "Evidence wins fights before they start." But nobody snitched at Willowbrook, not with Principal Knight signing off on every disciplinary notice. Mason's campaign turned public in the cafeteria space that looked more country club than school. One day, he walks over with a bouquet so big it probably cost more than her family's grocery budget for a month, plops it down, and makes a show. "Come on, Grace, you know you want to say yes." Phones came out. Grace, calm as stone, just said, "Not interested. Please respect that." Mason turned nasty in a heartbeat, calling her ungrateful loud enough for everyone to hear. And then Tyler snatched her textbook and dumped it in the trash. She didn't react, just watched, memorized how they moved. Mason favored his right knee. Brady leaned too far forward, Tyler's tails in his shoulders. "You're learning," Mason sneered. "Maybe you'll last the semester." That's when the twist hit. 3 cheerleaders, Jenna Park, Melissa Wong, and Ashley Davis, slid over at lunch, voices low, glancing around. "He's getting worse," Ashley said. "And it's not about his ego," Jenna cut in. "It's about power. You're dangerous, Grace. You're showing people it's possible to say no." Jenna had a folder 3 years of evidence, videos, screenshots. We've been waiting for someone brave enough to use it. Grace stared, realizing she wasn't as alone as she thought. But Mason's digital army was quick. Next thing you know, there's a photo of her digging her book out of the trash with a caption, "When you're too proud for help from your Better Strash scholarship." Dozens of cruel comments. But Grace screenshot everything, adding it to the growing file. Things escalated. At practice, the floor was slick, mats disappeared, equipment malfunctioned. Coach Rivera looked worried. She knew exactly whose fingerprints were on the sabotage, but was stuck with a contract up for renewal and Principal Knight calling the shots. During stretches, Brady slid over and threatened her, hand brushing her ponytail. Pretty hair shame if something happened. These boys, clueless, thinking they could scare her into submission. Tell Mason my answer's still no. To everything. Grace just kept moving. The turning point was late Tuesday. Practice over, locker room empty, and suddenly Mason and his 2 lieutenants are there, Mason holding those sharp fabric scissors. The smell of sweat and disinfectant, the echo of their laughter bouncing off the tiles, and in that moment, Grace knew they'd pushed her too far. Mason advanced, talking about teaching her respect, going for her ponytail. Everything went quiet inside Grace, just muscle memory and timing. She pivoted, right leg flashing out a roundhouse kick that sent the scissors skittering across the floor. Brady lunged. She flipped him into the lockers. Tyler charged. She swept his legs out. 15 seconds, 3 boys on the ground, and Grace never even lost her breath. "You can't TM why. Father will..." Mason stammered, and Grace just nodded at the security camera. "I'll be in your dad's office with the video, witness statements, and my attorney. Let's see how boys will be boys plays on the news." She left them there, picking up the scissors with a towel. In the parking lot, hands shaking from the adrenaline, she called Jenna. "You were right. I'm ready to be the catalyst." Turns out Jenna's network ran deep. Next morning, Grace walks into Principal Knight's office, USB drive in hand, evidence folder ready. He tries to intimidate, calls it a prank, threatens expulsion. Grace just slides the folder over. Screenshots, testimonies, email chains showing years of cover-ups. Jenna arrives, her mom, Judge Park in tow, plus the DA and a reporter. Patricia Knight, Mason's mom, storms in and demands to see the video. When she does, she slaps Mason hard and says, "We're done." The DA cuffs Mason for assault. The story explodes. By noon, news vans swarm the school. Students who'd never dared speak up start sharing their stories. Grace, sitting in a library with Jenna and the others, watches the power shift. Coach Rivera apologizes. She should have done more. And now she's put in her report and recommended Grace for captain. Even Brittany, the old captain, admits she was wrong and asks Grace to join the new support group for real change. Tyler, bruised but humbled, apologizes, says he has a little sister and can't imagine someone doing this to her. He volunteers to testify. Brady, meanwhile, tries to hiss threats about lawyers and reputations, but Grace just stares and downs the one sweating now, not her. That night, at the school board meeting, Grace stands up and lays out what needs to change. Mandatory consent education, independent complaint oversight, real protections for scholarship students. The board votes to adopt every proposal. They even create a new scholarship in her name for leadership and courage. Patricia Knight, exhausted but determined, tells Grace she's divorcing Richard and sending Mason to a therapeutic boarding school. "You could have destroyed him," she says, "but you held back." Grace just nods. Sometimes mercy takes more strength than any roundhouse kick. Months roll by. Investigations clean out the rot board members arrested, new leadership installed, Coach Rivera promoted. Jenna starts a nonprofit to help students document harassment. Grace leads the cheer team to a state championship, not just for the trophy, but because she leads by example, turning the squad into a real sisterhood. At graduation, she's valedictorian, and her speech is simple. Change doesn't come from one person fighting back, but from a community that finally says enough. She's off to UT on an academic scholarship, planning to study law. But first, She's teaching self-defense at her uncle's dojo, paying it forward, one kick at a time. As she drives away from Willowbrook for the last time, her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for saving my daughter. She was too scared to speak up, but you gave her courage." Grace smiles, thinking the world doesn't need more Grace Turners, it needs more people willing to stand up, speak out, and have each other's backs. So, you tell me, if you were there that night in the locker room, would you have stood with Grace? Would you have looked the other way or stood up? Comment below, because sometimes the real fight is about what kind of community we're willing to build and whether no finally means no.